Perfect. I'd like to welcome up an amazing return guest here for us, and we always have great conversations. The COO of Google DeepMind, Lila Ibrahim.
Thank you.
You know, this moment, like all these other moments we've had in AI, it feels like, you know, you hear so much in terms of, you know, super AGI, super intelligence is around the corner. You know, at the same time, people are like, it's overhyped. And you're in such an interesting place because you're really looking at the big things AI can do around science, drug discovery, all these things. Maybe a good place to start us off is to talk about where are we? What is actually happening today with the technology that your company really helped pioneer?
Well, thank you, Ina, for having me here and starting off with such a simple question like that.
Yeah, always here to help.
Let's see. So, you know, I think we're still in the very early days of artificial intelligence in many ways, even though it's all around us. I see some folks on their phones. If you have an Android phone and you have a longer battery life, you can thank AI for that. Your movie recommendations, song recommendations, that's all driven by AI. We just don't call it AI. And so I think in many ways, there's parts of AI that are really well integrated into
I have heard people say that, you know, AI is always when something is new. Like once it's actually in use, people don't call it AI.
Right, exactly. And that's why we're still at the generative AI, because we're still learning how to make it really useful. And so I think what's been interesting the past few years is generative AI has really captured the imagination of what we might be able to do with a next generation technology tool. And what we saw over the past year was AI became more multimodal. That meant you can put in text, you can put in voice, images, you can get out video. So this aspect of having many ways of interacting with the technologies, much like we do with other human beings, has really changed how we think about generative AI. But generative AI, and there's still a lot to do, by the way, on generative AI. Anyone type in anything into generative AI and get something not factual, right? Yeah, see a lot of heads nodding. We need to make it more factual. We need to think about how do we bring in things like memory or reasoning in a multimodal way as well. So there's still a lot of work to do in order to make it more of an assistive technology. It's a lot of value today, but there's still work to do. And there's work around in the fundamental research of how to improve AI as a field, as a science in of itself. The area I'm particularly excited about is using AI for scientific discovery. Much like, think about it as like the next generation of a microscope or telescope. Like, how can we understand the universe around us? And if we better understand the universe, can we unlock possible solutions to things like healthcare and diseases, to climate, to food security and crops. So I think there's a lot of really interesting things right now. We've already demonstrated that we can use AI for scientific discovery.
And where are we with that? Because I hear that all the time. I hear it's going to help us discover new drugs, find new materials, that sort of thing. And then I hear people say it hasn't actually discovered anything new yet. Like it's you know, not, which isn't a dig in the sense of, you know, it's programmed with existing human knowledge. It's great at finding things that we already know, but it's hard to think of today an LLM, you know, is it true discovery if it's finding a pattern that we haven't seen? My sense is that's really what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, and maybe what I'll do is I'll give an example of AlphaFold, which is an advanced AI system that we developed and about 4 years ago. And it predicts the 3D structure of a protein. Now, why is that important? Because diseases like, let's see, Parkinson's or even malaria, these are protein-based diseases. So we can also use proteins to help deal with industrial waste. So there was a 50-year grand challenge in the field of science of can you predict a 3D structure of a protein? And if you can understand it as a basic building block of life and how to address some of these issues. Every year, it would take, actually not every year, it would take a PhD student about 4 to 5 years to understand a single protein. We published a database with all 200 million plus known proteins known to humankind, where it's as simple as like a search or a map search. You type something in, it gives you the predicted 3D structure. and made that freely available to scientists worldwide. What's significant about that now is we've basically taken 1 billion years of PhD time and shrunk it into a database that's accessible. And in fact, we have 2.7 million researchers, who knew there were that many looking for protein folding, in 190 countries using this tool now to advance things like understanding diseases, which we can now work on therapeutics, including some of the neglected diseases in the global south that were underfunded. There's also work happening on like why are some crops more resistant to disease than others. And then work, as I mentioned, in dealing with industrial waste. The University of Portsmouth in the UK is actually working on plastic-eating enzymes and accelerating their work in that space. So we've been actually quite surprised by what this has unlocked and being used in areas that we could never have imagined. In fact, we're also excited because last year it was awarded with a Nobel Prize, the first time in history that a Nobel Prize was awarded to an application of AI. And I think this is entering a new era of discovery now. So your question of like, how far are we? I think we're still somewhat in the early days, but we are showing progress in this, and it's not just protein folding. There's work happening with like 15-day weather forecasting, which you can now predict the trail of a hurricane. There's work happening in material science discovery now in the hands of researchers worldwide, saying which ones can help us actually advance battery technology for electric vehicles, work with supercomputers. So I think we're kind of in this new era of discovery.
And a lot of the talk this year is agents, really allowing these tools not just to give information back to humans, taking action on their own. How do you feel in terms of, are we really ready to give, as you pointed out, it's still sometimes, giving us hallucinations. I still feel like if I use Gemini, if I use ChatGPT, any of the tools, I'm going to get back a lot of useful information. But if I really am going to rely on it, I got to go do a quick Google search and make sure it's not making something up. It feels to me like an agent isn't going to do that. It could. That's the thing. An agent could go back, do a Google search, make sure. But how ready is the technology, underlying technology, to be given these new powers?
Yeah, I think there's two parts to that. How ready is the technology, and how ready are we as humans?
For sure.
Last year, we did a technology demonstration around Project Astra, which is a research platform which introduces agentic features. And this basically means, as Ina mentioned, being able to take actions, but you as the person still has control and approves any action that's taken. And that might be something like you're planning a trip and you want to add it to your calendar, or you want to purchase tickets, activities like that, which I really want for planning my kids' summer holidays, but maybe at some point in the future.
But you still today, you want to be able to hit that button before your credit card gets billed.
Exactly. So we demonstrated this technology last year. And in fact, when we demonstrated it, we had also spent years in advance doing ethics research work on the ethics of advanced AI assistants, so that we as a technology community, as well as a broader community, can talk about both the opportunities and the risks, because we know that there are a lot of questions that come up. So we are starting to make progress. We have it in the hands of testers starting at the end of last year, externally, to try to see how this can work. But to the point we were talking about just now, of there's still a lot of work technologically we need to work through, and as a society, and thinking about how do we want to how do we right-size regulation to have both the opportunity while still mitigating the risk. And I would say, part of my job as chief operating officer, which basically means I oversee the operations, but also all of our responsibility and frontier safety work and how we collaborate externally. And this is part of my job, is to worry every day about how do we actually maximize the benefits while managing the risks. And I can tell you, AI is not slowing down. We all know that. And so I think it's a matter of how do we engage and collaborate early on in the process, so that we're building this technology with communities involved, so that the technology is happening with us all and not to us all, so that we retain agency in this.
Well, and I do feel we have this moment, the technology's here, we're getting it. For better or worse, it was released at a pretty early stage, which has the benefit of we're all getting to kind of see it and develop along with it. But we do have, I mean, even the most skeptical people are saying the really powerful stuff isn't that far off. Regulation has moved fast for regulation, but slow considering how fast AI is moving. I just read the new president repealed the executive order on AI. So now in the United States, we have no federal regulation. That seems like we're moving in the wrong direction. Am I wrong?
There's definitely a lot of changes happening. I think I think everyone's still processing the changes, but we're a global organization and we work through changes across the world all the time with administration changes, as well as evolution with the EU AI Act. And in fact, this morning I had breakfast with several ministers, and they were kind of sharing best practices about how they're bringing the technology into their communities. And I think also recognizing that there's still a lot, in many ways we feel like everybody has access, but also there's still a lot of people we risk leaving behind. So how do we ensure too that we are, for students, like this is one of my big passion areas of how are we making sure that the generation that has AI as part of their everyday life, that they're actually learning how to use this technology responsibly.
And you all did support the original executive order on AI. That was praised as a positive step, right?
Yeah, well, it was a lot of change. And yes, we did support it, and we put a lot of structures in place within Google DeepMind. But I think a lot of that was already built into the ethos of the organization. So for those of you who don't know, DeepMind was founded in 2000, acquired by Google in 2014. So we had a set of AI principles. We've operationalized that. In fact, it was one of my first focuses in the job when I started 7 years ago of how do you operationalize care in a research-driven organization, which is a lot about having the right internal processes, engaging external communities, doing the testing, thinking about how you deploy this. Regardless of different administrations around the world, this is something that we continue to be committed to.
And how confident are you, because it's not just about what Google DeepMind does. I mean, one of the things we've seen is the best in the field, like others, are quickly able to kind of match similar progress. It might change as we change techniques. The sort of sucking up everything on the human internet phase, everyone was able to kind of catch up and get to a pretty good place. How confident are you, and I know we're out of time, but how confident are you that we are going to use AI to benefit humanity and that we're not going to increase income inequality, leave more people behind, sort of create a world that, even if it's better for some, isn't better for all?
Well, I think it's actually up to all of us as humans and as society to have these types of conversations. I think I've been quite surprised by the pace in which everything is moving, and how every conversation now we have seems to be around AI. I think one of the benefits of that is holding us all to account on, yes, we have to mitigate the risk, and how do we also make sure that we're highlighting the potential benefits and making the right types of investments. There's a lot of work that needs to happen, I think, across governments, society, academia, scientific community, if we're going to have the impact that we want to have. And if we don't take the care now, like because of the pace in which it's moving, it's going to be harder to do later on.
Well, thank you so much, Lila. As I said, unfortunately, we're out of time, but to be continued. Stay, mingle, talk. Be sure to come back to Lighthouse. We have great programming all week. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ina. Thank you all.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Great to see you.
Thank you.